Girlfriend is angry because I refuse to give her complete financial control over me. As my girlfriend and I approach the 1-year anniversary, we've been talking about our individual and joint futures. During a casual conversation, it became apparent that our assumptions of how financial and household management should and would operate are entirely different. I believe that each of us ought to make an equal contribution and have an equal voice in financial matters. We would both likely have to put in a lot of effort and learn to accept concessions if this were to work out. Her strategy is simpler. Everything should be under her complete control. According to her plan, I would transfer my paychecks into an account under her name. She would take care of all the bills, and I might even get an allowance. She has raised this concept before. Roughly 6 months ago, she made a very casual mention of it. It was just too ridiculous to be true, so I figured it was some kind of prank. We've discussed this plan. Therefore, she's upset with me now that I don't agree with it, even though I didn't raise an objection. According to her perspective, there is no other way for the marriages in China to function, as this is how her parents, acrimonious, divorced marriages ended. According to me, a marriage ought to be a collaboration, and we ought to strive for the most equitable compromise. Under no circumstances will I give up all of my financial freedom. She's more than willing to accept Western standards for things that fit her, even though neither I nor we are Chinese. Her belief that she must send money home to help her parents in retirement worries me even more. This is another example of a cultural difference that I find difficult to comprehend. My parents belong to the lower middle class, have saved for retirement their entire lives, and are soon to retire with respectable pensions. I haven't met my girlfriend's parents, but they appear like they have a great life. They are successful business owners and pediatric surgeons. However, from what my girlfriend has told me, they're not at all thrifty, and their only retirement strategy is having their daughter send them support payments. I don't think it's a great idea for us to support their lifestyles with money that should be used to support our family and future. We seem to be at a standstill right now. She won't even talk about any other arrangement than the one she has in mind, and I won't give in to the pressure to make a concession. Does anyone know of anyone who has dealt with comparable cultural conflicts and could provide advice? Edit. Here are some details that are most likely pertinent. 1. We spend nearly all of our time together at her apartment, even though we don't live together. 2. I rent an apartment. She owns a home. 3. Both of us have jobs and enjoy some success. 4. A few years ago, I changed careers, and I'm currently leaving entry-level positions. Over the next 5 years, I anticipate a considerable raise in my wage. 5. She has advanced to the vice president level in her profession, but she had a setback when she was forced to leave one organization. She started a new work with considerably higher prospects, albeit at a lower pay grade. 6. Overall, I'd say she makes more money than I do now, and she probably will for the rest of our careers, barring a lottery-style success for my startup, but not by integer multiples. Edit 2. We're not in China either. We're UK residents of London. I'm from a different Northern European nation. She was transferred to school in England as a teenager after being born and raised in Shanghai. Her parents are still in Shanghai, as are both of their new husbands. Update. Sorry for the extended message. This isn't the most coherent writing I've ever done, but I'm a little out of it. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who left comments on my last post. It made me reflect on a number of things, including our stark cultural differences and a few particular personal problems. I came to the conclusion that I had no genuine claim on how she spent money on her family and that the cultural institution was too deeply embedded to try and address her sending money to her parents and filial piety in general. I believe it makes sense for her to carry out her obligation to her parents if she so chooses, provided that we have separate sources of income and savings. Regarding a wife managing all funds, there didn't seem to be as much agreement on whether or not that was customary. I still wasn't on board, even if some others thought it may be a good idea. We were dividing costs, which weighed heavily against me, and every time I asked her to pay for anything, she made me feel bad. That irritated me as well. Then I didn't inquire about it, but the topic of how we divided up the responsibilities in the relationship other from money came up. I suppose you might call her notions about what constitutes chivalry rigid and definite. She believed that males should always treat women like princesses. Carry purses and umbrellas, go shopping, open doors, walk on the correct side of the street. Pay for everything, obviously. Take up as little space in bed as possible, prepare meals, and clean her apartment. She's been irresponsible with my money on a few occasions. The worst was that we were supposed to travel to my native nation a few months ago. We had a fight a week prior, and she instructed me to cancel our hotel reservation. I was, at the time, scared to think that this was the beginning of the end. I asked her to reconsider, but I had to cancel the reservation. She was astonished to hear that we had nowhere to stay for our holiday after I apologized, and she overcame her rage. Ultimately, I reserved a significantly more costly last-minute hotel with the idea that we would share the bill. She still hasn't reimbursed me months later, and she pouts whenever I bring it up. All of this caused me to see her and her financial habits in a different perspective. After doing some research on her favorite purses, shoes, and scarves, I estimated that she owned approximately 30,000 pounds worth of high-end items that she frequently carried around and wore. I had no clue accessories and clothing could be so expensive. Though I'm not particularly against materialism, this surprised me. I reasoned that any discussion about our futures together would need to touch on our spending habits. I chose to take a chance and be honest with her about my finances since I didn't want to give up on what I believed to be a decent relationship just yet. I gave her a rundown of my earnings, outlays, savings, and budget. This was an error. She practically started talking about things we could purchase with my savings right away, as well as suggesting that since I wasn't making enough money, I should quit fiddling with computers and return to my job in finance, which is not going to happen. I made an effort to clarify to her that the purpose of my demonstration was not to prepare for an extravagant lifestyle now, but rather to show her how I lived and how important savings was for the future. We exchanged ideas back and forth for hours. She truly did believe that what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine, as I believe someone mentioned in the previous discussion. I'm not even sure if she ever realized why I would find that objectionable. She couldn't even seem to understand my point of view because it all seemed so normal to her. I did find out that she has absolutely no savings. She does make a good living, but she feels obligated to give her parents any extra cash at the end of each month. She purchases fancy items to support her opulent lifestyle because she doesn't have to return them if she runs out of money. I'm still not really sure how her parents are doing financially. They all feel that her sending the money is necessary, even though they might not even need it, as far as I'm aware. She invited me to move to Singapore with her the following morning. Since we were jointly planning our futures, she desired to be nearer to her parents. I was essentially astounded by this. I was attempting to determine whether our relationship might still be saved. Being treated like a eunuch servant and having to give up all of my money for the privilege had caused me to become quite resentful. She felt that would be an excellent moment to relocate to the other side of the globe. I then informed her that we were splitting up. She never saw this coming, so I'm not sure if we were ever in agreement on anything at this point. I was the best thing that had ever happened to her, and she was upset and didn't know why I wasn't pleased. She would stop at nothing to keep me. After falling for this for a few days, she yelled at me for breaking a wine glass while I was doing the dishes. I would say that we were both equally to blame. She insisted that I pay for it. Holy crap, how much can a wine glass cost? And that I accept responsibility for my carelessness. If only I could leave money on the table and turn around, that would be a cool thing to say. But when I retaliated, I was drawn into the entire situation. I apologized and changed the glass in the end. However, before she woke up the following morning, I packed up everything I owned from her residence and brought it home. We had to break up, I informed her when I returned later and woke her up. I walked away as soon as I told her because I was concerned she would use the excuses I had given the last time we spoke to trick me into remaining. I know, a cowardly way to go about things. That was the previous weekend. Feeling a little numb, but underneath there's a lot of bitterness and fury. I can see that she mistreated me for the most of our relationship now that I'm apart from her. I'm angry with myself for not confronting her earlier about her selfishness and tantrums. Why I allowed her to get away with it for so long is beyond me.